Welcome back to BizStation. Today we are going to talk about how organizations behave and evolve over time. Have you ever wondered why some massive companies collapse overnight while others survive for centuries? Businesses aren't just static buildings with logos slapped on the front. They're incredibly dynamic, living entities constantly reacting to the crazy world around them. As someone who loves making sense of complex frameworks, I am so excited to take you on a fascinating chronological journey through what academics call organization theory. We are literally going to transform over 2 centuries of dense academic research into a clear, visually structured story of corporate survival.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our agenda. We'll start with Stage 1, the mechanical era. Then we transition into Stage 2, open systems. Stage 3 brings us into organizational survival. And finally, Stage 4, the postmodern world of co-opetition. This perfectly maps out a 200-year evolution of how businesses operate and survive.
But before we trace that timeline, let's establish exactly what we mean by organization theory by drawing a quick line between the macro and the micro. If you're looking at the micro perspective, organizational behavior, you're focusing on the humans. You're asking, how do we motivate our employees? But today, we are taking the macro perspective. Organization theory looks at the entire entity. It explores the complex relationships between organizations, how whole businesses react to their environments, deal with fierce competition, and fundamentally change their overarching designs to stay alive. Let's check out our timeline. Over this 200-year evolution, you can clearly see 4 distinct stages. The absolutely crucial point to remember here is that each of these shifts didn't just happen by accident. They were triggered by a rapidly changing world. From the Industrial Revolution driving Stage 1, right through the mid-century multidisciplinary science boom in Stage 2, into the highly competitive corporate battlegrounds of Stage 3, all the way to the complex, globalized, tech-driven world we live in today. So let's start right at the beginning. Stage 1, the mechanical era, spanning roughly from 1800 to 1950. This era was heavily influenced by modernism and the booming Industrial Revolution. That quote right there perfectly encapsulates this era. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Modernism brought an absolute obsession with rationalism and strict quantification. Think of Frederick Taylor's Taylorism. This guy literally stood over factory workers with stopwatches, timing specific hand movements, just to find the one best way to shovel coal or move steel. Or consider Max Weber's strict definitions of bureaucracy. Back then, theories viewed organizations merely as rigid, predictable machines. Everything was about squeezing out every last drop of productivity through strict corporate structure. If it wasn't measurable efficiency, it simply didn't matter. But as we know, the world changed, and so did the theories. That brings us to Stage 2, open systems, spanning from 1950 to 1970. We stopped looking at organizations as magnificent clockwork mechanisms and started viewing them as living organisms. This matrix perfectly illustrates the open systems approach, where a company must constantly interact with its external environment to survive. First, goals. Every organism needs a purpose. Google's historical goal to organize the world's information gave their entire system a unified direction. Next, integration, how internal groups actually work together. The agile methodology in software development actively breaks down isolated silos so the system functions cooperatively. Then, latency. This is the culture maintaining the system. The Ritz-Carlton famously gives every single employee a daily budget to fix guest issues immediately, without ever asking a manager. That intense focus on autonomous service keeps their culture totally safe. Finally, adaptation. Just like animals adapting to a climate, traditional automakers are aggressively shifting to electric vehicles to adapt to severe environmental regulations. If they don't adapt, the system dies. This era also birthed contingency theory, which completely destroyed the idea that there is one best way to run a business. Instead, your success is contingent on specific variables. Look at internal variables. Imagine a high-tech startup dealing with unpredictable, fast-paced innovation. They desperately need a flat, flexible, organic structure just to survive the week. Now compare that to external variables. Imagine a massive pharmaceutical company. A single misstep could cost billions in fines. They absolutely must adopt a strict, heavily bureaucratic structure to satisfy external government regulations. There's no one best way anymore. They respond completely differently because their unique circumstances demand it. As we roll into the 1970s, the environment gets a whole lot more aggressive. Welcome to Stage 3, organizational survival, covering 1970 to 2000. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it unpacks resource dependency theory. It perfectly reflects a fierce survival of the fittest corporate ecosystem. Organizations fear depending on others for resources, ruthlessly fighting for autonomy. Take backward integration, a major coffee company buying its own coffee farms so it never relies on independent growers. Or Tesla spending billions to build gigafactories for their own batteries instead of relying on external suppliers. Then there's forward integration, Apple opening its own Apple stores. By doing this, they completely control the retail experience and guarantee no competing products sit next to theirs on the shelf. But interestingly, sometimes survival requires the exact opposite of fierce independence. Collaborative networks theory suggests that companies actually join forces to share scarce resources and become more competitive together. A prime example is the Open Compute project. Tech giants like Meta and Microsoft, who are otherwise bitter rivals, openly collaborate on complex hardware designs for massive data centers to lower industry costs. Or consider pharma companies partnering with university research labs. By sharing massive funding burdens and elite scientific expertise, they solve medical problems they simply couldn't tackle alone. Population ecology theory treats businesses literally like species in nature. Let's walk through these evolutionary steps. Step 1 is variation. A massive number of variations suddenly appear, like the huge boom of tiny fintech startups offering digital banking. Step 2 is selection. The environment is utterly ruthless here. During the brutal smartphone wars, BlackBerry and WebOS couldn't adapt to touchscreen ecosystems, so the environment mercilessly selected iOS and Android as the winners. The giants that couldn't adapt went extinct overnight. Step 3 is retention. A few chosen organizations grow massively and become deeply institutionalized, dominating their space for decades, much like Coca-Cola and PepsiCo. Ever notice how every modern coffee shop suddenly has exposed brick walls and hanging Edison bulbs? Institutional theory calls this isomorphism. It's the emergence of a common structure and approach among organizations in the same field, causing them to eventually resemble one another. They basically adopt these structures and aesthetics to please outsiders and maintain legitimacy within their environment's norms. 3 specific forces drive this corporate copycat behavior. First, mimetic forces. During massive uncertainty, companies copy successful competitors. If one major player releases a corporate social responsibility report, everyone mimics them just to look safe. Second, coercive forces. This isn't voluntary, it's external pressure or actual law. Every publicly traded company in the US uses GAAP accounting because powerful regulatory bodies literally coerce them to under threat of penalties. Third, normative forces. Driven by professional standards, organizations want to be seen as legitimate by peers, leading to the widespread adoption of credentials like ISO 901 certifications. They copy each other through nervous mimicking, strict legal force, and intense peer pressure. Finally, we arrive at our current era. Stage 4. Postmodern co-opetition, running from the year 2000 right up to the present day. And this brilliantly illustrates the postmodern concept of co-opetition, the bizarre blending of cooperation and competition. Look at the Star Alliance. Airlines like United and Lufthansa deeply share expensive airport lounges, yet viciously fight for the exact same passengers on routes. Even wilder is the tech industry. Apple and Samsung are the fiercest competitors on the planet. Yet when Apple needs tens of millions of high-quality display screens, who do they turn to? Samsung. No way, right? They simultaneously sign multi-billion-dollar manufacturing contracts while trying to utterly destroy each other in the consumer market. It's a wonderfully complex irony that the rigid theories of the 1800s could never have predicted. So, we've journeyed from the rigid mechanical era through living open systems and fierce survival ecologies all the way to postmodern co-opetition. Reflect for a moment. Which era of organization theory best describes your workplace right now? Are you in a highly structured Stage 1 bureaucracy where every minute is measured? Or a chaotic Stage 4 network of co-opetition? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the BizStation. See you in the next video.